Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Nissan Lenora Foundation, welcome to the first public dialogue on peace and democracy, part 1, sponsored by the National Endowment for Democracy. Barrister Doris Ebob Agbo is my name. It is my honor to be a moderator for this public dialogue. First of all, may I introduce to you our first panelist, Ms. Cheh. She is a humanitarian and peace builder. She works with the Community Humanitarian Emergency Board International. The second is Ms. Sulamante Mbonda. She's a peace expert, security and human rights issues. The third is a journalist and president of Cameroon Association of English-speaking journalists, sorry. Okay, now, I will give you an overview of the crisis in Cameroon. Cameroon is at a crossroads in its history. For nearly a decade, the country once described as a haven of peace in Africa has been sinking into a spiral of conflict. Institutional efforts to ensure a positive response to the end of crisis has been rendered futile. Cameroon is facing Boko Haram in the far north. Against a background of state neglect, socio-economic vulnerability emerged, acute poverty, low school enrollment rates, and social and generational divides. Intercommunal tensions and a weak connection with the rest of the country. The security situation in that part of the country has deteriorated. The army has been routinely targeted by conventional attacks. Kidnappings have been commonplace. Much is at stake when it comes to respect for human rights because of the exponential growth of abuses in the far north could push some young people caught between Boko Haram's hammer and the army's anvil to join the jihadist group. The influx of refugees from the Central African Republic has created another crisis in the east regions of the country, where cattle farmers engage in conflicts with the refugees over land. Most of the refugees live among local communities, thereby increasing the pressure on access to basic services such as health care or education and local resources such as firewood and water. A survey by the European Civil Protection and Human Rights Aid Operations showed that the refugees intend to stay in Cameroon as long as their home country remains marred by instability. The Anglophone crisis is in part a classic problem of a minority, which has swung between a desire for integration and desire for autonomy, and in part a more structural governance problem. It shows the limits of centralized national power and the ineffectiveness of decentralization program started in 1996. It is a crisis that started since October 2016 with protests and strikes related to sectorial demands. Despite some concessions made by the government, the crisis has escalated into a crisis over the economic and political marginalization of Cameroon's Anglophone minority. Now, through the eyes of faith, please, can we welcome Cheh, who will give us a talk on peace in Cameroon.
I'm pleased to join everyone here today for a peace dialogue and to talk about peace and democracy in Cameroon. So I'm just gonna give a rundown of the peace process and the conflict situation in Cameroon and how young people are participating and actions that have been taken to promote peace throughout the national territory of Cameroon. In 2016, when we had the outbreak of the Anglophone crisis, that started with the demands of lawyers and teachers, that started as a non-violent movement, turned into an armed conflict and almost at the brink of a civil war in Cameroon. So through that, we have suffered a lot of impact from this crisis. We have communities, these two English-speaking regions of Cameroon have been impacted in diverse ways. So we all have faced this in one way or the other that has resulted to different humanitarian needs, different humanitarian emergency needs that have rose up in the country. It has affected development. It has affected a lot of impact in our communities. We also have the Boko Haram insurgencies in Cameroon, in the northern part of the region. We also have the refugee crisis in the east part of the country. And just as the moderator mentioned a while ago during the overview of the discussion of today. So I'm just gonna be talking a little bit about the peace process in Cameroon, what young people are doing, because I want to understand that most of us know what peace is all about and the different peace processes, the dialogue, mediations, negotiation, DDR, and other forms of ceasefire processes in Cameroon. And I want to highlight that it's very important that we sit together like this to talk about the situation on ground. And it's also very important that everybody, we make it so inclusive, because I can see we have different people from different backgrounds, leaders present here today. And it's a huge thumb up for everyone here today participating, the inclusiveness here. I respect it so much. Peace is a very important thing, and despite the efforts made, we still have this conflict on ground. And I think that young people before now were not participating in the peace process in Cameroon. But as a result of the outbreak of the Anglophone crisis, we see more people, more activisms, more demonstrations coming up on social media, civil society taking actions, other bodies, democratic institutions speaking up and making their voices heard. So in the course of the presentation, I'll be asking participants that, do we think that young people in Cameroon are actively participating? Because there is a difference in young people taking the lead in the peace process. I think historically everywhere in the world, we have seen how young people have taken up the stage, have taken up the leadership in peace processes in all over the world. And we have the international communities, conversations are going on everywhere about young people's participation in the peace process. Because we saw an underrepresentation of young people in the peace process. So I think international frameworks like the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2250 and 2419, talking about youth participation in the peace process. I am particularly concerned about this aspect, because I think the most radicalized persons throughout this Anglophone crisis, which is the most current crisis in the country of Cameroon, it's the young people. The young people are the ones that are easily radicalized. The young people are the ones taking up arms. The young people are the ones losing their lives. The young people are the ones losing their jobs. The young people are the ones who are highly affected, women, children, vulnerable persons. So I think that when we are talking about the issues of peace and conflict in our setting, it's important we put young people at the center of it all. So I also want to emphasize that if we as young people come together like this to impact ourselves, because we are talking about young people taking the lead, calling on government to lead us, to give us hear our voices and taking the lead in transforming change, and bringing about change, bringing about positive impact in our communities. But I think that the peace situation in Cameroon, a lot of people need capacity building programs like these to be able to drive this change to where we want it to be. The problem of Cameroon, it's an issue that we need to develop our capacity, because a lot of people have gone about, I am talking like somebody who has had interviewed young people to ask them about their ideas on the conflict situation in Cameroon. And most of them are not informed. Most of them are not aware. Most of them are not empowered enough to understand and to drive the change that they want to see. So I think the very first thing is that more people should get into this peace space, and more young people should capacitate themselves on issues like this. Subsequently, I'll be talking more about young people's participation, what young people can do to participate in bringing about peace and bringing about transforming the violence to make our country a happy country once more.
Thank you, Ms. Patra. Now let us hear from the second panelist. Please, can you talk on the roles of civil society organizations and media in support of peace in Cameroon?
First of all, let me appreciate this platform that we're discussing the issues that concern our country right now, in this moment, which is about the conflict that is ongoing in the two English-speaking regions of the country, as well as the Boko Haram insurgents in the far north. You've asked me to talk about the role of media in all of this, in this chaos, in this confusion, in this hopelessness, in these crises, any word that you would like to describe the situation. Basically, I'll put it in one form. The media is supposed to help for us to have a conversation and to drive the public debate. And I think that the media has been able to play that role this far. I'll just give you an example. When you watch television, the local channels on Sunday, you realize that there's a lot of debate and about the issues that are happening at the moment, and everyone is to share comments and give their opinion, because it is, the platform for people to be able to talk their divergent views. And what the media is supposed to do, or what the media is doing, is that every opinion is supposed to count in the media, be it, take the case of the Anglophone regions, be it those who want separation, be it those who want federalism, be it those who want the status quo, or be it those who want an improvement in the decentralization process. Because it is having these views and these perspectives that putting out there that decisions can be made, informed decisions can be made. So what the media wants to do is to provide that information. And the general problem that we've been having in the media is that it's increasingly difficult for journalists to be able to carry out unbiased, evidence-based reporting in the two English-speaking regions, because journalists are targets, media houses are targets, because everybody wants the journalists to tell a story that favors their own biases. For example, if you tell a story of police harassment, which is ongoing, and we all know that, or the forces that that keep on harassing, you have trouble with government. If you also talk about the extortion, kidnappings, and arrest that is carried out by the separatist fighters, you also have to face attacks from these different camps. So, and so it has become very challenging for journalists to be able to cover this crisis, because the coverage is meant to bring the issues to the limelight. It is meant to shine a harsh light on the realities of what is going on. Journalists are meant to dig deeper to be able to make people to be informed, because we're talking about a democracy and you need people to be informed in order to make informed choices. And unfortunately too, the media has not been playing this role. I'm a journalist, I got to admit that, because you have a difficulty here that when you're reporting, especially if you're reporting as an Anglophone, you're reporting about something that concerns you. So sometimes your emotions can creep into your scripts without you noticing. Or maybe you have your own point of view of how you want, for example, if you might want suppression, and then you tend to do reporting that highlights suppression as the option. Or you might want federalism, and then you tend to do reporting which only, or you might be in support of one camp. And we have seen that happen. You tend to do very biased reporting. And so when there's that biased reporting, people now make choices depending on that biased reporting. And so they're going to make the wrong choices. So you see, there's a tendency for a journalist to mislead. And we're having also the issues of misinformation deliberately put out there to misinform. And it is happening because somebody, you have a situation where you have I don't want to call it, we have a situation of poverty. Journalists are not well paid. And so it is possible to corrupt the journalists so that they misinform. And we're also wrestling against social media. And social media, unfortunately, we too, as journalists, we sometimes fall victims to social media misinformation. And we go straight to social media, we collect information from there, we disseminate information which is wrong, which is not verified. And the situation of conflict, you need to really verify your information and be sure about the information that you are handing out there to the population. So that and watch your language. If you use inflammatory language, unfortunately, we've seen this a lot in the press. Where you, for example, if there was once a headline, I don't know if it's the Post, I've forgotten, which talked about soldiers meet their Waterloo. And that was a very strong term. It gives the impression that, okay, the other camp is doing so well, and people can make an informed choice, can make a choice based on that. So increasingly, there's that difficulty of how do you best report in a risky environment. How you risk your life, you have to report. How are you sure about the facts? Are you able to verify, especially when you cannot be present on site, because it's difficult for you to report from the heart of the crisis. It's difficult. I don't know if there's a journalist that is based in Batibo, there's a journalist that is based in Manfe, or all of that. So there's that difficulty of being able to verify. There's that difficulty of taking yourself out of the story. I don't want to use journalistic terms. I just want to try to keep it as much simple as possible. And so you realize that we're having that clear difficulty, because you also have journalists who are, let me just round up. You also have the problem of training. Some journalists are not equipped. Unfortunately, you realize that in our profession, anybody can get in and anybody can get out. You just need to string 2 or 3 sentences together and then you call yourself a journalist. So everybody has now become a journalist, and it's misleading. So there are few that you can rely on. So how do we provide reliable, verified information so that decisions that are made around the conflict are decisions from an informed choice? Thank you.
Okay, right now we are going to take some few questions. We want to encourage participants, questions and contributions. We'd like to encourage participants to raise their hand. You can raise your hand by using the bottom right, or you can press and hold on your name and you see the option that allows you to raise your hand. So based on the interventions of our panelists today, in this first session, please, do you have any contributions or any questions you'd like to ask them? Now is the time. And also to remind you that you can use the chat box too, which is found at the bottom right, and send in your questions either by writing or you can indicate by raising your hand. The floor is open. Okay, I can see Chair Valerie Tamukong. You have the floor, please.
Once more, I wish to appreciate the webinar. Is really enriching. Please, I wish to ask this to Mr. Jude. Now, when you're not in the heart of the crisis, then you collect information from people who are there. How then do you verify this information? Or do you have multiple? But how then do you verify this information collected at the heart of the crisis when you are not there?
Okay. Thank you very much for the question, and it's a very important question. In conflict reporting, when you are not on site, what you need to do is you don't need to be very quick to publish. What you need to do is to have information from several sources. You need to have information from several sources. You don't need to take information from one source and then you publish. What you need to do is that you need to get several versions and several views, from several sources for you to be able to know if because what you want to provide is the truth, or you want to come close to the truth, So you need to have several sources and you don't need to depend on one source. And you also need, for example, to let your audience know that you are not reporting from the conflict area, that you are reporting, for example, if you are reporting from Yaoundé, say you are reporting from Yaoundé, and you got in contact with your sources where the event happened, or where the incident happened, on what you are reporting, the story that you are trying to tell, so that those who are reading you or those who are listening to you can be able to factor that into your story. I cannot be in Yaoundé and I'm reporting about an incident that happened. Let's take, for example, Ngabo, and I was not there. But I need to let my audience know that I'm talking with sources, with people who are there, but I'm reporting from Yaoundé, so that in case of any discrepancies and the rest, people can be able, the audience can understand you, and you are truthful to them, you see. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much. It answers.
Okay,
then,
thank you very much.
Okay, please, just a follow-up too. How then do you protect how then do you protect other journalists? Like, for example, the case of Wazizi. Thank you.
Okay. The case of Wazizi was is still a very difficult case for us, because increasingly media professionals are facing attacks from the warring parties, from the two warring parties, because once you report something that does not go well with one party, you're sure that you're going to have maybe it could be verbal attacks, be threats, you can be picked up, and that's why media associations exist. And unfortunately, some journalists don't see the interests of belonging to these media associations, because when you are arrested, we can now come in as a media association and we start putting pressure and we start doing advocacy for you to be released. That does not mean that, for example, if you commit a crime that has nothing to do with your line of duty, we will not be able to use journalism in order to let you out for a crime you committed. It doesn't mean that as a journalist, we are above the law. We are also held by the same laws that every other citizen is bound to obey. And so for us, our interest is to make sure that we advocate for the journalists, to make sure that we put pressure by all means necessary. I don't think it's right for me here to say exactly what we can do at the background, who we can talk to and things like that. But be rest assured that we can always try, but it's always very, very difficult. So what we try to do is to help journalists avoid a situation of arrest. A good journalist is one who is alive to tell another story. So you don't venture or you don't get risky, get yourself into a risky environment because you want to tell the story. So you must live in order to tell the story. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Jules Vigban, please, in 1 minute, just take this question from Francis Ajumane, who says, what relation can you make between the role of journalists in the coverage of the Boko Haram crisis and the Anglophone crisis?
The relation is, those are conflict areas, and but the difference, there's a very big difference in the two, in the sense that the enemy that is Boko Haram is an external enemy. It's an enemy that is outside our borders, and but the Anglophone crisis is an internal issue, and an issue that concerns all of us. It concerns Cameroonians. So reporting for Boko Haram is different. Reporting for the conflict, for the Anglophone crisis, or you call it the ongoing conflict in the northwest and southwest, and but for Boko Haram, what is happening is that very few journalists venture to tell the story of, to cover the issues concerning Boko Haram, and depend on the information that is being shared by the military and the incidents that happen. Maybe it's a bomb blast or something, and just report the casualties and the rest. But for the Anglophone crisis, it's, like I said, it's an internal problem, and so the reporting is different, because you're reporting conflict that's within, that has to be solved within. It's not reporting a conflict where the regular army is seen as doing the right thing when fighting Boko Haram. But there's a difference when it comes to the Anglophone crisis. We are reporting a crisis where the military is supposed to be held to some standards, because it's an in-house fight.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we have a question from Dr. Joël Moudio. Please, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Clarisse. Ma préoccupation va d'abord, d'entrée de jeu, j'aimerais remercier les organisateurs de ce forum, cette discussion qui a une importance assez très singulière, d'autant plus que le contexte y prête fortement. Et pour rejoindre un certain nombre de préoccupations adressées à Jude, quand on parle de la ligne éditoriale, est-ce que déjà il n'y a pas un biais dans le traitement de l'information, surtout dans l'information de crise, quand par exemple, avec les histoires de ce qui s'est passé à Gabou et la façon dont la presse, quand je parle en fait les presses, la façon dont les presses ont traité cette information, est-ce que d'office, il n'y a pas un problème de neutralité de la presse au Cameroun? Parce que le problème de la neutralité de la presse, est-ce qu'on ne peut pas la rejoindre, la lignée avec ce qu'on vous appelez la ligne éditoriale? C'est déjà tronqué d'avance. Quand on a déjà ligne éditoriale il y a déjà traitement différencié de l'information selon ce que les différentes presses, selon les intérêts des différentes presses. Est-ce que la ligne éditoriale ne tronque pas d'abord le traitement de l'information de crise? Ça, c'est une question adressée à Jude. Et l'autre question adressée à Patron. Patron, est-ce que tu penses que... je vais demander, pourquoi tu penses que les jeunes sont beaucoup plus enlisés dans des situations de crise comme ce qui s'est passé, comme la crise au nord-ouest et au sud-ouest et celle de Boko Haram? Comment est-ce qu'on peut expliquer ce phénomène-là? Parce qu'on ne va pas dire que c'est la condition sociale des jeunes, non. Parce qu'il n'y a pas que les jeunes qui sont enlisés dans cette affaire-là. On a trouvé aussi des femmes dans la crise à l'extrême nord. On a trouvé les femmes, on a trouvé d'autres catégories d'acteurs sociaux. Même, pourquoi tu penses que les jeunes sont beaucoup plus enlisés dans ce type de crise?
All right, thank you so much, sir. I believe young people are more exposed and are easily radicalized to pick up arms and to get into violent situations. I think young people have their own grievances, they have their own expectations, they have their own desires, be it economical, be it socially, which I believe that most people will pick up arms because they have been disgruntled, they have their own personal challenges that they face. And if like the situation of Boko Haram in the north, after the Boko Haram faced a lot of attacks in the north from the military, and in one day about 800 of them young people were killed. So that is why it came to Cameroon, migrated to Cameroon. And as a result of that, their movements were rather non-violent at the point between 2011 to 2013. It was non-violent because of their religious ideologies. And I think that's why people could easily buy them, people could easily settle for them. And while in the process, they got radicalized to pick up arms. So I believe that young people are easily more affected or more radicalized to pick up arms because of their desires. You can look at the case in Cameroon. We young people constitute the majority of the population, about 70%. And not up to half of that percentage have jobs. Not up to half of that percentage are being capacitated enough to understand or educated enough to understand certain things. So I think in the north, and coupled with the fact that that particular area, you have low rate of literacy there. So I think that is why they were easily radicalized to pick up arms. And looking at it from the Anglophone perspective as well, and the Anglophone conflict as well, I think that we saw the demands, we saw the peaceful movement on the street, and we cannot deny that the Anglophones are being marginalized. They have their own demands, they have their own desires, they have their own expectations. And it first of all started as a non-violent movement before it escalated. Why? Because of the frequent clashes between the non-state armed groups and the armed groups, the militaries in the country. So I think those are some of the reasons why young people will easily pick up arms, because of their grievances, more than you have the elderly people and you have women. But I think the target is on young people. Everybody wants young persons to join them, young boys to join them to pick up arms. So I think it put young people at a risk more of being radicalized to pick up arms.
Okay, thank you very much, Petran. We are just going to have Vibanjut give us a summarily an answer to the other questions so that we can move on. And we will take the next question for this session.
Concerning the question about the editorial line or the editorial policy, every house has an editorial policy, but I don't think there is an editorial policy that tells you that you should lie. I don't think that there is an editorial policy that, or even as a journalist, I don't think there is anything in the ethics of the profession which says that you have to respect an editorial policy that allows you to lie. What I'm saying is we have journalists around who believe that the role as watchdogs is priceless. We must accept that you have journalists who have integrity. And the media in Cameroon, also we have several media, both public and private. We have several radios, we have several TVs, we have several newspapers. And that gives room for different treatment of the same story. People will not treat the same story the same. I think the case of I looked at the case of Ngabo, for example. While media, that is government media, is forced to support the views of the community that really are sent out by the government. You also have the private media that doesn't have that obligation to do that. And so they are able to tell the story of Ngabo differently. While we're saying elsewhere that the information was that the army wasn't involved, there was also other media houses that were saying that the army was involved. So in as much as we have a problem of an independent media, because I particularly think of those who are working for the state-owned media, where they have to support government policy and where government opinion takes priority. That is able to balance out with the private media. And also where you have journalists who will, what we call brown envelopes, those who will receive money from a particular party in the conflict. They receive money maybe from government and press, and a story is dictated to them on how they should present the story and how they should present the facts on courts. You also have media that is trying to do the right thing, that cannot be bought over, that they know that being credible is what those media houses are searching for. They know that what is priceless to them is their credibility, and they have to play that watchdog role. And so those people will not, will not be forced to swing in favor of the state. So those you have that. So the issue of the editorial policy is a very dicey situation, and we have been having, because particularly with the state-owned media, it's a very big problem. Journalists who work there also want to be credible, and so it doesn't mean that because it is state-owned, it therefore means that journalists will not be able to do their job of verify and present the facts as they are. So we're still a long way to go in our country where the state-owned will have free hands. In fact, it's difficult for any media to have free hands. All media houses have limitations as to where and challenges as to what they can cover and what they cannot cover. You also have media houses where you have the owner dictates on what is supposed to be done. The owner is of a particular political party, and so that house has its own opinions and ideologies, and that house tends to defend the ideologies of the owner. So those are the challenges that journalists are having, but nevertheless, you still have journalists who want to tell the story the way it is. And what is also helping is that you also have freelance journalists who do not work for local media, who are able to tell the story of Cameroon using the foreign media. You have journalists who are locally here, who are working for VOA, they're working for BBC, and so they can be able to, those are more independent news organs, so they can be able to tell the story in all fairness and truth.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Viban. Just to remind everyone, what's the theme of today? The theme is promoting peace and democracy in Cameroon. How can we promote peace and democracy? How can the media promote? How can you, as a civil society person, promote, as an individual promote? So let's remember our team. If we have contributions to give in that regards, not only questions, because we want to get the opinion of as many people as possible as well. So please let us know if you have a contribution and not only a question. Now we will take one last reaction from Gilbert Ajebe Akame before moving on to the next session with our moderator. Over to you, Gilbert.
I really appreciate being invited to join this discussion this evening. I think it's a very, very interesting discussion. And the first speaker, Ms. Patron, she actually caught my interest because what she spoke about is what I've been doing for some years back within the civil society in Cameroon. I founded an organization called Solidarity and Development Initiative, which is a platform that encourages young people in Cameroon to engage and to participate in matters that concern them in the world around them. So I wanted to make a comment regarding what she spoke about. So it's true that the issue of youth participation is really gaining more and more relevance recently worldwide, like she mentioned. However, during the ongoing crisis, and specifically when this national dialogue was organized, I made a couple of observations, namely that while us in Cameroon, we actually making these strides towards acknowledging the voice of the youth, I think that it's still far away from that kind of self-determined engagement or participation, and far from the type of engagement that is actually giving the consideration that is needed. So I wanted to mention some of the issues that I think are the problem, or the reasons that I think are holding us back in this aspect. One of them, I think, is the lack of the culture that accepts young people's voices. I've been opportunity to read through the Cameroon strategy on youth. I think it's the 2006 youth strategy. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure if that has been updated or not. But in that strategy, it's clearly stated that the elder or the there is this lack of acceptance that the Cameroonian society doesn't accept the fact that young people can play a positive role within the community and precisely within issues of conflict resolution. The second one is the issue of lack of enthusiasm from youths themselves. Youths, they don't see it necessary. They don't see the impact that they can create with, in issues about governance, in politics, and to an extent even in social life. I mean, in making changes within their communities. Youths in Cameroon are still far away from, taking upon themselves this role. Thirdly, I think there is of course, the lack of the political will that I mentioned earlier, that we are still, far from accepting youth or making changes that will give to young people a place when it comes to governance and politics in Cameroon. The last point is the lack of a national level framework. I mentioned that we have a strategy that I've come across. It's an old piece of document from 2006. I've been trying to search around to see if that document or if that piece of legislation has been updated recently, but I couldn't find that. So I think there is this lack of national level framework. Now, I want to put out a couple of pointers there that I think could help us find a way out or a way forward as it concerns young people in Cameroon engaging. First, I think we need to build that culture that accepts youth's voices. We could do that in different ways. I think we could tap from the movement that's going on today around the world that actually puts youth, you know, at the forefront, even though sometimes could be more of a decorative, you know, but I think that we could tap from that and also start making strides and also start making policies that will encourage young people. Secondly, I think that we need to put in place laws. We need to put in place national level institutional framework, not just at the level of the centralized national system. I believe we have to decentralize the framework for youth participation. It doesn't just have to be the Ministry of Youth Affairs. It doesn't just have to be, you know, some director in Yaoundé, but I think we need to have local level framework. We need to have like special rapporteurs on youth affairs. We need to have all issues about, for example, school clubs, you know, local community youth engagement platforms should be created. So that will help go a long way to, you know, strengthen the institutional framework for youth participation. And at the end, I would like to say young people themselves should engage. Young people should realize, see the world around them and see that they are being given more and more relevance, and they should take advantage of these, join movements, join platforms such as mine, take action no matter how small it could be or how accepted that could be. I think that youth should tap from the world around them. There is the social media, and we in Cameroon should not be left behind. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Peace is not just the absence of conflict. Peace is the creation of an environment where all can flourish. How can then peace be achieved in Cameroon?
Yeah, okay. Definitely peace is not just the absence of conflict. I think peace it's very dynamic, and it has its own different levels of approach and different thematics where people can engage it. I think in the Cameroonian context, and creating an enabling environment where it's inclusive and where people can join in the conversation to promote peace. I think any action, any peaceful action out there taken by anybody to talk about peace, to promote peace, is possible for us to achieve peace. The goal is for us to start wherever we can, any medium we can, any way we can engage in ensuring that we live in a peaceful society. I was talking to some young people, and I was asking them that, do you think that do you think that the government or the government has created an enabling environment where young people can raise their voices, young people can voice out their aspirations and their desires and to promote peace? Because they tell me that sometimes when they go out to talk about peace, do campaigns out there, they're sometimes arrested, sometimes they face a lot of rejections, of confrontations from the armed forces. So I was wondering, then I came to realize that there's a way we can go about it. And I like what the world, the global framework is doing, the campaigns, the Youth for Peace, peace is possible. I think those are avenues and those are hashtags that we can engage. I think the media is one of the powerful tools where we can achieve peace and we can promote our ideas and we can raise our voices. I think peace is possible. Peace is very possible in Cameroonian context. Just like I was comparing the Cameroon conflict and the one in Serbia sometime ago, and it's the same, but realize how young people, how dynamic they are, how creative and innovative they are. They were able to achieve the peace, and their demands they were met because they joined together, they came together, formed a voice as one person, and their message was heard. And though it can take a long time, though it took them a long time, and I believe that the road to peace in Cameroon gradually is gaining grounds. And I think the future is going to be better, it's going to be brighter if we get more young people raising their voices. I think peace will be achievable. Thank you.
Okay, we have 2 hands up. I can still see Cheh, Valerie, Tamukong. Please, you have the floor. Please, let's make our contributions as brief and straight to the point as possible. Now we want to know how can we achieve peace in Cameroon? And we throw the same question that Barrister gave to Ms. Petran to talk about peace is not the absence of war. How then do we promote peace? Chair Valerie, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. These are my contributions. The first thing, if we really do want to have peace in our communities, we should start by having a good family. If you're a mother or you're a father, and you cannot take out time to teach your children those basic values in the house, or you focus so much on your work, your children will start becoming violent in their house and they'll take the violence outside. It's very necessary that parents instill some value of love, harmony, togetherness among their children before they can go out and preach out. Secondly, I hear it's everywhere. People are saying that an enabling environment here and there, the government, okay. Me, I do believe that if we do want to establish an enabling environment, it is true the government has a role to play, international organizations, but what are we doing? So the first, what I think is, as an individual, you should think of a personal initiative that contribute peace to your community. Don't go too fast. Start even where you live, your neighborhood. What initiative can you start as an individual that's going to initiate peace, or that's going to elevate the lives of people of that community? When you think of that, they start something. You can do that as an individual, or you can discuss with your friends. If you really have friends, you talk about it, and if it's a problem, you also be a problem to them. And collectively, or even individually, that initiative can be started. Secondly, you can decide to follow your education. Let's say, possibly, if you're a businessman and you realize, okay, the policies do not favor the business environment, and therefore it causes people to go around and strike. It's okay, fine. I'll become a policy advocate or a policy influencer. You go to school, become a judge, become a lawyer. So that at the end of the day, it may take a longer time, but you'll be one of those who are going to influence the policies. And the third is to travel. Make it an opportunity. There are things which you may sit back and you're complaining that the government not giving to you or people don't give it to you. Meanwhile, if you travel and go to places, you will see that there are people who took personal initiatives and they were able to solve these problems. It will motivate you as well to take personal initiatives. And also, when you travel, a lot of things which you consider as problems become solutions to you, which you come back and you explore the opportunities. Also, I want to say that youth should participate in politics. They should not just sit back and say they should participate in politics. It may be small, but they have to participate so that gradually people that they elect in public offices will be, even if they don't represent them 100%, but somehow they'll have some considerations. But you don't participate, and then people have probably how do you call it, a revolution. The people go outside to riot. Those people, because they know that you people mean nothing to them, they will arrest people. But if they know that no, you people voted for them, at least they will step in and intervene for you, and you will be able to conveniently pass your message to the appropriate authority. Then we have also that the students in school, your children or your junior ones in school, you should instill in them some degree of awareness that schooling is not just a means to employment. It should be a potential avenue where students are able to network. You use it as a networking platform for them to support and sustain one another, not just going to school to compete. Because as well said by Barrister, that piece is not the absence of conflict. It is true. If just in competition, when you compete with somebody, deep down in you, it brings out some conflicts. But which why students should realize that schooling is an incredible platform where they can come and work together, support each other for the greater good. And that's one reason why we, for me as a personal initiative, I started the Milman Foundation, and we have gone so far where we have gone so far. So, but I want to encourage all of us that through this and such events like this, such platforms like this, such symposiums like this, we should not just come and say the government or you as an individual. At the end of the day, start an initiative, or if you started one, inculcate it in your family. Thank you very much.
Okay. We take another intervention from Dinga Tambi.
Good evening, everyone. And now I would like to say a very interesting conversation, very interesting points made there. I would also like to appreciate the idea of the statement of Barista. It is a very pertinent one. I would start by saying that the Cameroon, for example, has not been in peace for the past 2 decades. It is unfortunate every time what we hear in the media is Cameroon is a peaceful country. Cameroon is a peaceful country. Cameroon has never been a peaceful country for about 2 decades now. What we have been experiencing is a negative peace. That's the absence of war. We haven't had positive peace in Cameroon for over 2 decades, like I said. And the main problem of this is the fact that Cameroonians do not have the opportunity to express themselves. In a country, people are not allowed to talk. People are not allowed to give their opinions. Whenever you give your opinion, if it is against the regime in power, it becomes a problem. People stay inside, keep inside them the grievances they have, the grudges they have, and they go on daily with it, being unhappy with it, but they can't express it because they're in fears to go out and protest, because we all know what it is to protest. If you have to protest in Cameroon, the next thing is you're picked up and you're locked up. Recently, we had a case of a journalist who is supposedly dead already, someone who is supposed to be putting out information based on what he sees in the field, but he couldn't do that, even as a journalist. Then what more of the common man in the street? I'll take another glaring example. It's like the Anglophone problem is something of today. No, these are grievances that have been accumulated over the years. Just to show you that the population has not been happy over the years. They have been living in what I call negative peace. They have not been allowed to express themselves. And what is coming out today is just an outburst of something that I've been having in them for a very long time. We will start having peace in Cameroon. For now, we're still very far from the word peace, honestly. We are very far from the word peace. We'll start having peace in Cameroon when the citizens have the opportunity and the freedom to express themselves about what they want and what they think and what should be done. Thank you.
Dr. Joël Moudio, please, you have the floor.
Oui, merci une fois de plus de me repasser la parole. Ma contribution pour une paix durable au Cameroun se situe à 2 niveaux de responsabilité. Responsabilité collective et une responsabilité individuelle qui est celle de tout un chacun. Je veux parler de la responsabilité collective. Quand je parle de responsabilité collective, je fais allusion à l'implication des jeunes dans le processus de décision. Du moins, ce qui concerne l'entrepreneuriat jeune. Je vais prendre 2 cas précis, 2 cas d'études que j'ai eu à mener dans le passé. Le premier cas, c'est celui de ces entrepreneurs, de ces commerçants d'objets d'art situés sur le long de la route, là, comment on appelle la menu GMN, je ne sais pas trop, monter en rouge, quelque chose comme ça, où il était question de mettre en place un certain nombre de projets, un prochain village artisanal qui devait quitter d'un certain lieu à un certain autre lieu. Mais du jour au lendemain, se sont retrouvés, on va dire, dupés. Parce que la décision, ce qui avait été consenti au départ n'a pas été réalisé à la fin. Et à la fin, c'est un immeuble qui a été construit. Et eux, ils sont toujours restés dehors, sous la pluie. Ça, c'est un cas d'école ou des jeunes, la voix des jeunes entrepreneurs, de ceux qui veulent se construire, de ces jeunes qui veulent se construire, n'a pas été véritablement écouté, si c'était négligé. Un autre cas, c'est celui de ces jeunes qui sont dans nos écoles d'agriculture. Je pense que je suis convaincu que demain, l'économie de demain, c'est l'économie agricole. Et les jeunes sont beaucoup plus davantage impliqués dans cette économie agricole. On voit bien avec les écoles techniques, je ne vais pas parler de la phase parce qu'elle est vieille, c'est l'ancienne, mais il y a beaucoup de pôles là, il y en a pratiquement dans toutes les 10 régions. La plupart des jeunes qui sortent, qu'est-ce qu'on leur dit? On leur dit qu'il faut avoir la terre. Pour ceux qui n'ont donc pas la terre, qu'est-ce qu'ils vont faire? Ils vont aller s'inscrire à l'université de Yaoundé 2, à l'université de Yaoundé 1, bref, dans les universités d'État pour compléter un parcours général. Responsabilité collective dans le sens où il faudrait davantage que notre société encourage l'entrepreneuriat jeune en modifiant par exemple les cursus, les curricula depuis le secondaire parce que l'ensemble de ces curricula tendent d'abord à généraliser l'enseignement et avec en conséquence à mettre les étudiants ou les jeunes diplômés dans une situation de chômage parce que n'ayant pas une formation pratique, n'ayant pas une formation pratique à la base, ne peuvent donc pas se déployer sur le marché de l'emploi. Ils n'ont aucun métier, ils n'apprennent aucun métier. Tout ce qu'ils apprennent, ce sont des connaissances théoriques qui ne leur permettent pas d'être compétitifs sur le marché. À défaut, par exemple, d'entrer dans une école d'ingénieurs ou bien d'autres qui, même au sortir de là, ne leur permet pas de mieux s'exprimer parce que il y a ce problème de création d'emplois. C'est vrai que le gouvernement fait des efforts, il faut le dire. C'est vrai que le gouvernement fait des efforts avec la possibilité de créer son entreprise en 48 heures, mais je vais dire que c'est insuffisant. Il peut davantage faire mieux. D'abord en écoutant véritablement les jeunes, en les impliquant dans les processus de décision et jusqu'à la gare. Quand je dis jusqu'à la gare, jusqu'à l'implémentation de cette politique de décision. Donc, c'est une responsabilité collective, d'abord de l'État et ensuite des jeunes qui doivent aussi se battre pour pouvoir être impliqués dans ces processus de décision parce que la plupart du temps, ils sont ignorants de ce qu'ils ont des droits, de ce qu'ils sont aussi sollicités dans cette plateforme, dans cette plateforme de décision pour pouvoir parler de leurs problèmes, pouvoir poser leurs problèmes, pour pouvoir accompagner l'État à mettre en place une politique véritable. Une responsabilité individuelle à plusieurs niveaux. Je vais prendre des cas simples. J'entre dans un taxi, des gens mangent dans le taxi et puis ils jettent, par exemple, des pots de bananes ou bien des papiers sur la chaussée. Mais vraiment, ce n'est pas le gouvernement qui va venir vous dire de ne pas jeter. Le gouvernement fait tout pour mettre ses bacs. Et même si le gouvernement ne met pas ses bacs, qu'est-ce que nous, on pense que... Je veux dire, comment est-ce qu'on appréhende cette situation? Si je dois marcher, j'ai ma nourriture, je mange, et quand j'arrive dans une chaussée qui a été nettoyée, qui est propre, et je jette mes détritus sur même la chaussée, et on va dire que parce qu'il y a Isaac qui est censé faire ce travail. Je pense qu'il y a d'abord cette conscience morale de tout un chacun, de ce que l'État, c'est aussi nous. L'État, c'est aussi nous. Ce n'est pas le gouvernement seulement, c'est aussi nous. Et si l'État, c'est aussi nous, c'est une république, c'est la chose publique. Ça veut dire que la route, c'est la chose publique. Et si la route, c'est la chose publique, nous devons avoir cette conscience de ce que la route, c'est un objet, c'est un instrument de développement, parce que là où la route passe, le développement suit. Une responsabilité de tout un chacun parce que au niveau des formations, et c'est un constat criard. Bon, peut-être c'est aussi dû au système éducatif. La plupart des jeunes rêvent, quand ils ont le bac, c'est quoi? C'est l'ENAM. C'est quoi? C'est faculté de médecine, qui est bien. D'ailleurs, on a besoin de ces gens. Ça fait partie du corps. Mais ils n'ont aucun métier. C'est arrivé, c'est quand ils ont la licence et ils pensent, pour certains qui ont déjà tout fait, tous les concours, ils n'ont pas réussi. Hein? C'est là qu'ils pensent qu'il faut maintenant faire quelque chose de pratique. Quelque chose de pratique, et il se fait souvent trop tard. Il se fait souvent trop tard. Et puis d'autres se trouvent en train de faire des sauts métiers. Bon, il n'y a pas de saut métier, il n'y a pas de saut métier. Mais ils se trouvent en fait en train de faire ce qu'eux, ils ne voulaient pas faire à la base. Et la responsabilité de tout un chacun, parce que les jeunes aujourd'hui, la plupart des jeunes sont irresponsables. La plupart des jeunes sont irresponsables.
Thank you very much, Dr. Moudio, for that. Please, Barrister Doris, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Answer. Mr. Viban, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Inclusivity, accountability, transparency, and freedom of speech are the fundamentals of democracy. What then can be done to encourage democracy in Cameroon?
Okay, I would like to speak from the perspective of media professional. Just to throw in a contribution on the issue about how do we promote peace. I think what the media can do should do is to be able to give to make the opinion of everybody count. There is a tendency to ignore or underreport issues. And when people, our country is multi-ethnic. And so if you, in the media, if people cannot get their own voice to be heard, the media is said to be the voice of the voiceless. So when you get the issues about a minority and you bring them to the limelight and they are discussed, the people feel involved, and they don't feel that they have been left out, because when people are left out, they start feeling that's the violence is going to come later on, because they will want to force their voices to be heard. And so the media has that responsibility to tell the story of every Cameroonian. Then equally, the sort of language that the media uses, sometimes the choice of words can erupt and even inflame and even push for violence. That is very recurrent in a media, hate speech, and make some other people feel left out of the general Cameroon. So you have to, media has to be very watchful about the sort of language that we use. So I've talked of two levels: getting everybody's story to be told, and then how do you tell the story not to disenfranchise a group of people, not to label a group of people, not to level a tribe or a people. So the other issues that you mentioned about democracy, one thing which the media is to be known for is to be the watchdog. If there are issues of corruption, you expect the media to uncover them. If there are issues of bad governance, you expect the media to uncover them. If there are issues of neglect, so basically what the media should do is to hold power to account, and which is lacking in our community. Very few media organs and journalists are able to do that because of the context where we function. You know, one thing is for people need to have access to information, and that access to that information is provided by the media. And unfortunately, in other countries, you have the Information Act, which I'm running up, which compels authorities to give information. in a country, you still have a lot of holding of information. And so if journalists cannot be able to source for information because there's that if there's a hold on that information is not being given out, it therefore means that the population is not going to be informed. And so it becomes very difficult to get the population to be aware of their rights and their duties. So within a democracy, so that it's important for us to move forward in our country. There's a need for us to have that Information Act that compels authorities to give you information. You can't have information about a particular company because they don't have a law that compels them to give you that information. And so sourcing for information and being able to write evidence-based report becomes very difficult. And like I just said, first thing is that media has to know that their role as a watchdog is priceless. And then there's also the need to have access to information so that information can be passed on to the population so that they know their rights and their duties within the democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vivian.
Thank you, Barrister. Let's just take a comment from the comment section. We say when youth start growing nationalistic ideas that can foster peace and development, they become enemies of the nation Cameroon. So I firmly believe there is a strong blame on government policies that could foster youth implication on peace and leadership aspects. Though there's still, however, some kind of lack of youth implication in the country where youth are on pension and the old in service, I think a solution to this, to more youth implication into leadership and peace matters in Cameroon, is the liberalization of human rights and true freedom of speech, where every youth can give his or her opinion on country matters. Contribution there from Bernard Kenglefak.
We have come to the end of this debate. I want to use this opportunity to thank the panelists, the organizers of the event, and the contributors, the audience. Thank you very much. See you in 2 weeks in the part 2 of this same topic. Thank you very much.